You all know Sam Williams. Give it up for Sam from Forward Research. Make some noise for Hannah from Mask. And Eraser from 7X. So we'll get into it. We're going to start with a question for everybody. So, by the way, who doesn't know what Arweave is? Raise your hand if you don't know what Arweave is. That's what's up. We're doing a good work. Okay, so I want to start talking about the aha moments that brought us to this space. So I'm the creative director of ARIO, and one of the things we're always thinking about is how do we take the human story of Arweave and make it exciting and interesting and make it understandable for people. So Sam, what was your first aha moment for this protocol that you created when you realized what could be possible, that you were like, this is amazing?
So I was walking up a mountain with my father almost 6 years ago to the month, I think. It's actually sometime in June. And I was thinking, I just got done reading this book, The Gulag Archipelago by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. And a lot of the things he was describing in there is too long to go into, but a lot of the things he was describing are essentially about how preservation of the truth is important for the sanctity of society, so that society doesn't crumble. And at the time, there's a lot of chaos in the world, and I think there's even more chaos today. I could never have imagined what kind of chaos back 6 years ago we would have been facing, but it did feel like things were shifting in a unstable fashion. So I went walking one day, and I was thinking about blockchains that I've been watching since about 2012, something like that. And I just realized, hey, well, one of the things you need to do if you want to install an authoritarian regime is to take control of the information space. And actually, we have these decentralized ledgers now, which replicate information around the world. Could we make it so that we could make a ledger of newspaper articles? And that was what got us started. It was a kind of hook of an idea. I was like, wow, yeah. I mean, the first imaginings of Arweave were like, okay, we're going to take Bitcoin. We're going to strip out all of the information we possibly can from web pages. So mine it out so it's just like the raw text. And then we're going to store that on chain. And that should just about work for like tiny amounts of data. It'll be like expensive, but it is actually workable. And so we started looking at that. And then one day it was like, oh, we can actually probably improve on the work algorithms and make it so the work is replicating this data. And that was another kind of aha moment. And then there were about 5 more iterations of that along the way. And somewhere along the line, the endowment came into it. And that was a pretty big moment where we're like, oh, right, now we can make it so we can fit arbitrary amounts of data inside and make it financially sustainable rather than just having limited amounts of data so that the ledger didn't grow too large, because that was the initial concern, right? Then I would say, we launched the thing, and that was kind of a miracle in my mind. I remember Seb, I think, was there actually the day afterwards. It was like a Arweave launch party, but everyone was completely dead. My hands were shaking as I was trying to cut this cake. And we'd been up for like 25 hours straight getting this thing live. But that was like, wow, this thing is now real. And then it was about 7 or 8 months later that I had, I'd say, the last aha moment. And everything after that's just been growth. And that was, we realized, okay, when you have permanent information storage, that has a bunch of surprising downstream effects that you wouldn't anticipate. And particularly that is, well, the information is now out of anyone's control. And that information itself can be applications. And that means you can build web applications that have the properties of protocols. And that's an idea that, yeah, we had that idea like nearly 5 years ago now, and here we are all today. So I'm extremely thankful you came out to this event and to see you all in person. So much of the Arweave ecosystem is like these conversations we have online. I'm sure I know a bunch of your like handles, not your real names. And that's just spawned this ecosystem, which has grown at this amazing rate. And that's how we got here from my from my perspective. So I'm extremely thankful for everyone's help with that.
I want to get back to that idea that you're talking about, the ledger of the history of the world. And I know you were influenced by Orwell. And I'm just curious, I thought it's a cool trivia to explain how you memorialized one of his famous book titles in the protocol.
Yeah. Well, honestly, there's a bunch of those different. I tried to make it so that there were. What I'm always terrified of is that Web 2 style companies, they become corrupted over time. Like they all had great missions when they started with, and then now today they're these hideous monstrosities that we're all sort of like, sorry, there's someone from Facebook here, but I'm going to say it. People are embarrassed to work there. So like, so one of the things we try to do as well is, the core thing, which is make the protocol immutable. Make it so that we cannot corrupt it. And that is what gives me like real strength and hope in the long-term sanctity of the protocol. But on top of that, we also layered a bunch of things like, you could say, Easter eggs. So for example, the port that Arweave nodes talk to each other on, oh, wow. Quite the storm outside.
Immutable storage.
I must have done like 100 of these talks since the start of Arweave. This has never happened before.
This is the first time a hurricane.
Hurricane outside. Great.
Well, yeah, Orwell. So anyway.
Oh, well, all right. Yeah, so the port that Arweave nodes talk to each other on is 1984. And also we have a German services company. It's called Cluster 227. It's named after the 227 people that gave personal accounts to Alexander Solzhenitsyn in the creating of the Gulag Archipelago. There's a bunch of others. Like Arweave was born on the 69th anniversary. So like I think Elon would like that it's 69, I assume. 69th anniversary of the publishing of 1984, which is actually really helpful, by the way. Pro tip, if you want to launch something like this, you get like an immutable release date like that, and you have to stick to it. That's why we work 25 hours straight to get the thing done on the right day. Yeah, there's a bunch of others. Oh, Winston, of course, is the minimal unit of Arweave tokens.
Hannah, did you have an aha moment when you were thinking, okay, this thing is cool. What is possible with the permaweb, and why is it exciting?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are also several aha moments. I think the first one is the most personal one is back in 2022, in April, I was actually in Shanghai. That's when I just started working with the Mask team, and we started building out our decentralized identity protocol. And all of a sudden, the entire city of Shanghai was in a massive lockdown for 2 months. So I was by myself, and then there were a lot of just issues with like the kind of the emergency, like how they handled overall the lockdown. And there was actually a viral video called "The Sound of April" that kind of documented very real like recordings of people calling the government, just a lot of footage. And of course, like that viral video got censored in a lot of different platforms. And we started seeing it like getting censored everywhere. Actually, like it was a group of people that started uploading it to Arweave and really having this kind of internet of memory permanently stored to like for all of us, myself included, to remember all these like real voices at the time. That was like a truly very personal and sentimental moment. And then seeing kind of the power of permaweb. Even before but before that, like I've like been a fan of like what Internet Archive did in the past, like a lot of these like kind of preservation of records, but truly having this like decentralized serverless solution out there really enabled kind of the preservation of these memories and then incentivized people to contribute continuation of building out like this kind of overall like web of memories on the permaweb. Yeah, and then now that we're from the product side of Mask and with like NextID's our DID protocol, like we start to see like a lot of the high value content on like decentralized social, as well as like proof of your humanity, like the proof of who you are. These are the highly valuable information that could truly benefit from permaweb.
That's a good answer. Thank you. Eraser, how about you? Did you have a moment when you were like, the permaweb's awesome?
Yeah, so comparing to those guys, I'm kind of like a greedy VC, right? So I'm thinking about, okay, what is the next use case that you can build on permaweb, right? So recently we were kind of like researching on why there is no advertisement layer on Web3. So what is missing here? You know, advertisement actually contribute for more than 50% of revenue in the Web2 world, but why we don't have it here, right? Some people argue that it's because we don't have enough people that are using Web3. Some argue it's because of we don't have enough traffic, but after our kind of like internal discussion, we find that, okay, if we break it down to three things, if an advertisement layer exists, it should come down to three things. First one is data. And the second one is the algorithm that you use to actually compute data and do all those kind of like recommendations and find the way of actually how to release advertisement to the individuals. And the third one is actually the messaging layer, or how to reach out to people, how to let them know or understand, or you show them the advertisement. So let's come to the first one, which is the data one. I mean, we've seen a lot of projects doing on-chain data attribution, but to me, on-chain data is something like an open database, right? So no one is actually kind of like owning that, and you see a lot of projects analyzing things on transactions. But to me, transactions, or I mean on-chain transactions, if you're mapping it to Web2 kind of experiences, is the last step of a user journey, right? So you know that this guy bought an ape, right? So, and you know he holds another 10 Azuki, but you don't know why. You don't know how and when he see this and he decided to buy something and then decided to trade something. Okay, so right now for almost 99% of the apps right now existing are kind of like off-chain, right? So they have some kind of on-chain part, but how do you actually store the user data or the user-generated data from an off-chain part and make it kind of like interoperable and composable with each other, and then the owners of that data can control that? I think RV and PermaWeb actually solve that problem, and with the kind of like help from like QuillDB, those databases. So basically, I mean, after a user actually generate his own data and put it in a kind of like database on RV, and he can absolutely 100% control of their data, and he can actually know where to use this data to actually feed it into a kind of like an algorithm to analyze those data, right? And then maybe he can choose what type of advertisement they want and what type of company they can just kind of like licensing my data to, right? So without the PermaWeb, without the DB, like decentralized DB in there, it cannot be possible, right? So recently we were thinking about this, and we invested in several kind of on-chain, off-chain attribution platforms, like marketing platforms, advertisement platforms, and also the form of advertisement will change. For example, at the beginning it's like show you a video, show you a message, but later on maybe it's kind of like an NFT airdrop. It's another type of advertisement, right? So I think with the help of PermaWeb, that thing may become kind of true in 2 or 3 years, and when every apps, they cannot be like fully on-chain right now, but if the off-chain part, when users are generating the data, you put it onto RV, if you put it onto the PermaWeb, so it actually generates a lot of value inside it. So that's kind of my thinking around what is the next biggest thing that maybe RV and the whole PermaWeb could utilize.
That's cool. We have 3 very different perspectives, and they all tie together. The social element, the political, the financial. It's always really interesting to have these conversations. And something that always comes up is we try to consider what are the barriers to mass adoption.
So I think that the way that Arweave has gained adoption so far is as a sort of utility in the background for other services that people are using. Which makes sense as the first step. Pretty happy with that. There's something like 600 million, I would guess, in total files related to NFTs on the PermaWeb now. That's a lot. So there's lots of people out there whose data is being replicated in the network, and they're making use of its utility, and they're getting introduced to it slowly that way as well. I was actually just thinking during the talk from Quill earlier that, right, Arweave has become like the backbone of many of these different applications, and so our ecosystem is extremely developer focused. Like there's really relatively few people that are, say just fans of the technology. That it's mostly people that are building on and using the technology that are part of the ecosystem, and that has served us very well because it means that we get all these interesting conversations and all these people innovating in these ways that I think are pretty amazing. But I think over time the utility of the network that is like outside of pure just replication of data will become more obvious to people, and that will move the visibility of the network up the stack, if you will. So things I'm thinking about there are composability of data, right? The fact that the Arweave network is a big open data lake. Anyone can write data to it. You can see who wrote that data, and then you can compose on top of it. As we were talking about earlier, there are huge opportunities in that area. You license the data, you can pay to access other people's data, and now suddenly the data moats become like the opposite. You're incentivized as a developer to make your data available for other people to build upon. And now from the user's perspective, the web is like one big application or something like that, rather than many different individual silos. And when we get to that point of adoption, I think that the fact that people are using Arweave underneath will become very, very obvious to them, because it's like, well, where else can I do this thing? You know, I had my video and it was on the D TikTok thing, and now it's also on D YouTube, and I'm getting revenue from both. That just doesn't happen anywhere else. Yeah, I guess those are my thoughts on it. It's like early stage is network to network or network to business to consumer, it seems. And later stage, I imagine that the consumers will become more and more aware of the perma web underneath.
Does that tie in with the idea of content-fi a little bit?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, this is one of those things that is a bet at this point. We can't tell if it's what will happen, but if it does, it'll be enormous. Basic principle is everything on Arweave can be made into what we call an atomic asset. So you have the data, but you also have the provenance information. Like, I know who uploaded this piece of information, I know when they did it, and they can also set arbitrary metadata on top of that. And then they can also embed contracts inside those pieces of data if they want, which is pretty interesting. Like, if your government, and this is a big asterisk, if your government values your financial freedom, I would say, you are able to mint these tokens that allow you to trade your revenue streams in applications on the permaweb. And now suddenly when you upload a video to, you know, YouTube, and we actually have some pretty interesting things in the works on that one, but your decentralized video sharing website, you can then say, okay, instead of waiting for like a year to get the $200 I was going to get out of this, I can sell 50% of it to someone that wants to, that wants to take that future profit for perhaps a discount, but I get that value today, and then I can go out and I can buy a microphone, a better webcam, and so on. And so suddenly all of the data on the web becomes monetizable and tradable by the people that upload it. And again, like, can't tell if this is the future that is going to happen, but if it does, I think it'll be huge. And I think it's all related to the same idea. All the data is composable, you can license it, and so everyone can build on top of it. And then the value flows go back to the people that created the data in the first place, and the applications that help them upload it. And then those are tradable themselves. And then you can have funds of people trading interests in those pieces of data. And you can kind of see like how this new economy could emerge, and a new web that has a vastly different, would you say, like look and feel. Like the experience of it will be very different. Again, can't tell if that's going to happen, but if it does, it'll be huge.
Well, and it ties into this idea creators always face as time being the ultimate commodity and the ultimate scarcity. So you know, I can get a new microphone with this video. It incentivizes great work, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. What's compelling about this idea is that it is fundamentally incentive compatible, right? Like, creators will like this. It's almost certain that that is the case because it allows them to be financially efficient in a way that essentially all other industries that have this time-based revenue approach have eventually become. Like, when you farm, you don't just sow the seeds today, wait 9 months, and then harvest and then sell the crop. You typically would sell an interest in that crop up front today. And that helps you run your financial flows in an efficient way. The same is also true for startups. When they raise venture capital, it is essentially a form of this. The same is true for even Bitcoin miners. So it's everywhere apart from the content, the content economy on the internet. We think that that's a pretty obvious play. But hey, maybe people just use Arweave for permanent storage eventually. But my hunch is that that will be part of it.
That's a great answer. And it brings me to a question for you, Hannah. I was wondering if you could talk about Next ID, because Sam was talking kind of about like how we bridge those worlds. And I was wondering how Mask has addressed these issues.
Yeah, absolutely. And then for those that don't know Mask very well, so brief overview, we're a decentralized social infrastructure project with the mission of being able to bridge users from Web 2 social media to Web 3 to different applications. So we do so through mostly two approaches. One is a protocol layer decentralized identity protocol called Next ID that I co-started it since last April. And on top of it, we built two applications. One is a Twitter browser extension that essentially one user creates create their decentralized identity. This browser extension allows them to send encrypted tweets, upload files to our drive, and also like turning Twitter essentially into a decentralized super app. So very seamless introduction to what Web3 looks like for users on Twitter. And we are also beta testing our mobile end that kind of like plays down a similar thesis of having a decentralized identity with your profiles of both Web2 and Web3, like by Twitter, Discord, Farcaster, to like your your ENS, etc. And it's a content aggregator on our mobile client. So that's kind of the overview. And in terms of talking about content fi or social fi, like fi is definitely something I think in the crypto world people like to throw in and incentivize more users to come in. But I think like for us, we want to first make sure we're developing the building blocks for really good and enhanced social experience. In a Web3 context, without making it just Web3 social. Like the social experience or the content consumption experience in itself should be superior than what we currently see in the context of having the creators' content that's accessible, that's like also potentially tradable across different platforms. That can potentially increase the user experience versus now having like your content, your social graph siloed in different platforms. With next ideas like decentralized identity infrastructure, what we're trying to do is using DID-based authentication to allow users to seamlessly use their Web2 credentials to access like dApps through our auth method. And the reason that we're advocating for a DID-focused auth versus a wallet-focused auth is one, it's safer. Like a lot of wallets these days, a lot of users are scared of like connecting their wallets, a lot of things, and there are a lot of security and phishing concerns out there. And number two, talking about enhancing the social experience, like your DID can contain a lot more of your, like you said, like your social footprints off-chain, your content that you created on Medium or elsewhere, and as well as like things that you post on Mirror or like elsewhere, like your on-chain footprint. So the DID contains a lot more of your social reputation versus like a wallet-based approach. So we're building that infrastructure out, and then on top of it, now there's the identity graph of your cyber self, or what we call like your avatar, that has like who I am, like on Discord, on GitHub, on Twitter, as well as cross chain. So that's kind of our approach and thinking in terms of where we are right now. We first need to make sure that our personhood and our humanity can be portable across platforms, and on top of it, also encourage more developers to build on top. To like on the application layer to like really advocate for the overall decentralized tech stack for a social experience.
That's pretty cool. Connecting a lot of dots.
Yeah, for sure. And just one quick thing I definitely resonate with, kind of in terms of exposing Arweave or like DID to retail audience. We face the same thing. People thought we're a naming service. We're not. We're very developer focused. And at this point, it's truly like important that we serve the builders really well. And maybe like for most of the end users, they don't need to understand a lot of the technical like know-hows or like how it works, but they just need to know like they reap the benefits of us building on top of it. And then later on, as we like as the adoption curve goes on, like there may be like more use cases directly facing the retails.
That's really cool. We're gonna have a race to wrap things up because I know we're almost at time, but I wanted to know what your experience with this is and how 7X does things like bring the Web2 experience with Web3 to people.
I do have a different opinion on that question actually. So when people there are always projects that coming to me said will give the Web3 users a Web2 kind of experience, that I'm asking why. And like 10 years ago, do you meet people that think that, okay, they tell you that I will give you a Web2 application with a Web1 experiences, right? So, I mean, I don't think that's a thing that we should solve right now. So, I mean, in our theory, we think that the Web2 world, I would say the traditional world and the decentralized world, Web3 world, are actually two parallel worlds. So, I think there are two forces that actually like make people coming from Web2 to Web3. One is the pooling forces. So right now in the market, it's all about pooling forces. Money making here is a lot of X fight here, right? So basically, people want to make money, so that's why they come to this space, right? So they actually overcome all the difficulties of learning how to actually download a wallet and everything that related to actually on-chain kind of interactions. So they can do that. So you don't need to educate them because there's money there, right? So yeah, and another force that we may see in the future in like 2 or 3 years is the pushing forces. So people are tired of, okay, my data will be leaked by Facebook or Twitter or whatever, or my account, my money in my bank account is freezed by some kind of governments or whatever, right? So basically, I mean, fortunately, I want to see some unfortunate thing happen in Web 2 that's pushing people to here. So basically that's what we do. So I don't think that right now for the application kind of developers, they need to go for a kind of like pure Web 2 experiences. So I don't believe in that because, who knows, like maybe 5 years later, there's all things around like AI and augmented reality, this kind of stuff. So the whole interaction, the whole interface will be different, completely different. There's no such thing as Web 3. Web 3 kind of experiences, or Web 2 or Web 1. This is just one single experience, right? So I don't think that, our developers need to focus on that much. We need to focus on what value we bring that to the customer, to the users that could definitely beneficial them, and also maybe when they face some kind of a difficulty or those unfortunate things, we will be here prepared for you guys to come to Web3, right? So that's my kind of, opinion around that. Yeah.
That's a great answer. Well, I want to thank our panelists for their awesome participation, and I want to thank you all for coming out, and shout out to Quill for all their help. So let's give it up one more time. Thank you, 7X, Mask, and thanks to ARIO team, and thanks, Sam, for joining the panel.
Thank you for having us.
This has been wonderful.